3. None of us, I imagine, slept very heavily or continuously that morning, for both the excitement of Lake's discovery and the mounting fury of the wind were against such a thing. So savage was the blast even where we were that we could not help wondering how much worse it was at Lake's camp, directly under the vast unknown peaks that bred and delivered it. McTeague's was awake at 10 o'clock and tried to get Lake on the wireless as agreed, but some electrical condition in the disturbed air to the westward seemed to prevent communication. We did, however, get to Arkham, and Douglas told me that he had likewise been trying to reach Lake. He had not known about the wind, for very little was blowing at McMurdo Sound, despite its persistent rage where we were. Throughout the day, we all listened anxiously and tried to get Lake at intervals, but invariably without results. At noon, a positive frenzy of winds navigated out of the west, causing us to fear for the safety of our camp, but it eventually died down with only a moderate relapse at 2 p.m. At 3 o'clock, it was very quiet, and we redoubled our efforts to get Lake. Reflecting, I had 4 planes, each provided with an excellent shortwave outfit. We cannot imagine any ordinary accident capable of crippling all his wireless equipment at once. Nevertheless, the stony silence continued, and we thought of the delirious force the wind must have had in his locality. We cannot help making the most dire conjectures. By 6 o'clock, our fears had become intense and indefinite, and after a wireless consultation with Douglas and Thor Finsen, I resolved to take steps toward an investigation. The 5th airplane, with which we had left at McMurdo Sound, supplied cache with Sherman and 2 sailors, was in good shape and ready for instant use. And it seemed that the very emergency from which it had been saved was now upon us. I got Sherman by wireless and ordered him to join me with the plane and the 2 sailors at the southern base as quickly as possible, and the air conditions being apparently highly favorable. We then talked over the personnel of the coming investigation party and decided that we would include all hands, together with the sledge and the dogs which I kept with me. Even so great a load would not be totally too much for one of the huge planes, built to our special orders for heavy machinery transportation. At intervals, I tried to reach Lake with the wireless, but all to no purpose. Sherman, with the sailors Gunnarsson and Larson, took off at 7:30 and reported a quiet flight from several points of the wing. They arrived at our base at midnight, and all hands at once discussed the next move. It was risky business sailing over the Antarctic in a single airplane without any lines of bases, but one drew back from what seemed like the plainest necessity. We turned in at 2 o'clock for the brief rest after some preliminary loading of the plane, but we're up again in 4 hours to finish the loading and packing. At 7:15 a.m., January 25th, we started flying northwestward under McTeague's pilotage with 10 men, 7 dogs, a sledge, of fuel and food supply, and other items including the plane's wireless outfit. The atmosphere was clear, fairly quiet, and relatively mild in temperature. And we anticipated very little trouble in reaching this latitude and longitude designated by Blake as the site of his camp. Our apprehensions were over what we might find or fail to find at the end of our journey, for silence continued to answer all calls dispatched to the camp. Every incident of that 4.5-hour flight is burned into my recollection because of its crucial position in my life. It marked my loss at the age of 54 of all that peace and balance which the normal mind possesses through its accustomed conception of external nature and nature's laws. Thenceforward, the 10 of us, with the student Danforth and myself, above all others, were to face a hideously amplified world of lurking horrors which nothing can erase from our emotions, in which we would refrain from sharing with mankind in general if we could. The newspapers have printed all the bulletins, which we sent from the moving plane, telling of our non-stop course, our 2 battles with treacherous upper air gales, our glimpse of the broken surface where Lake had sunk his mid-journey shaft 3 days before, and our sight of a group of strange fluffy snow cylinders noted by Amundsen and Bird as rolling in the wind across the endless leagues of frozen plateau. There came a point, though, when our sensations could not be conveyed in any words the press would understand, and a later point where we had to adopt a national rule of strict censorship. The sailor Larson was first to spy this jagged line of witch-like cones and pinnacles ahead, and a shout sent everyone to the windows of the great cabin plane. Despite our speed, they were very slow in gaining prominence. Hence we knew they must be infinitely far off, and visible only because of their abnormal height. Little by little, however, they rose grimly into the western sky, allowing us to distinguish various bare, bleak, blackish summits, and to catch this curious sense of fantasy which they inspired as seen in the reddish antarctic light against the provocative background of iridescent ice dust clouds. In the whole spectacle there was a persistent, pervasive hint of stupendous secrecy and potential revelation, as if these stark nightmare spires marked the pylons of a frightful gateway in the forbidden spheres of dream, the complex gulfs of remote time and space and altered dimensionality. I could not help feeling that they were evil things, mountains of madness, whose farther slopes looked out over some accursed ultimate abyss. That seething, half-luminous cloud background had held ineffable suggestions of a vague, ethereal beyondness, far more than terrestrial spatial. And gave appalling reminders of the utter remoteness, separateness, desolation, and eon-long death of this untrodden and unfathomed austral world. It was young Danforth who drew our notice to the curious regularities of the higher mountain skyline. Regularities like clean fragments of perfect cubes, which Lake had mentioned in his messages, and which indeed justified his comparison with the dreamlike suggestions of primordial temper ruins on cloudy Asian mountaintops, so subtly and strangely painted by Roic. There was indeed something hauntingly Roic-like about this whole unearthly continent of mountainous mystery. I felt it in October, too, when we first caught sight of Victoria Land, and I felt it afresh now. I felt, too, that another wave of uneasy consciousness of arcane, mythical resemblances, of how disturbingly this lethal realm corresponded to the evilly famed plateau of Lang in the primal writings. My colleges have placed Lang in Central Asia, but the racial memory of man or of its predecessors as long. It may well be that certain tales have come down from lands and mountains and temples of horror earlier than Asia, and earlier than any human world we know. A few daring mystics have hinted at a Pleistocene origin for the fragmentary Akkadic manuscripts, and have suggested that the devotees of Saftagua were as alien to mankind as Saftagua itself. Lying wherever in space or time it might brood was not a region I would care to be in or near, nor did I relish the proximity of a world that had ever bred such ambiguous and arcane monstrosities as those Lake had just mentioned. At the moment I felt sorry I had ever read the abhorred Necronomicon, or taught so much with that unpleasantly erudite folklorist Wilmarth at the university. This mood undoubtedly served to aggravate my reaction to the bizarre mirage which burst upon us from the increasingly opalescent zenith as we drew near the mountains and began to make out the cumulative undulations of the foothills. I had seen dozens of polar mirages during the preceding weeks, some of them quite as uncanny and fantastically vivid as the present example, but this one had a wholly novel and obscure quality of menacing symbolism, and I shuddered even as the seething labyrinth of fabulous walls and towers and minarets loomed out of the troubled ice vapors above our heads. The effect was that of a cyclopean city of no architecture known to man or human imagination, with vast aggregations of night black masonry embodying monstrous perversions of geometric laws and attaining the most grotesque extremes of sinister bizarrerie. They were truncated cones, sometimes terraced or fluted, surmounted by tall cylindrical shafts here and there, bulbously enlarged and often capped with tiers of thinning scalloped discs and strange beetling table-like constructions, suggesting piles of multitudinous rectangular slabs or singular plates of or 5-pointed stars, with each one overlapping the one beneath. They were composite cones and pyramids, either alone or surmounting the cylinder or cubes, or flatter truncated coves and pyramids, and occasional needle-like spires and curious clusters of 5. All these febrile structures seem knit together by tubular bridges crossing down to one or the other at various dizzying heights. And the applied scale of the whole was terrifying and impressive in its sheer gigantism. The general type of mirage was not unlike some of the wilder forms observed and drawn by the Arctic whaler Scoresby in 1820. But at this time and place, with those dark, unknown mountain peaks soaring stupendously overhead, that anomalous elder world discovery in our minds, and the pall of the probable disaster enveloping the greater part of our expedition, we all seem to find it in the taint of latent malignity and infinitely evil port. I was glad when the mirage began to break up, though in the process the various nightmare turrets and cones assumed distorted temporary forms of even vaster hideousness, as the whole illusion dissolved to churning opalescence. We began to look earthward again, and saw that our journey's end was not far off. The unknown mountains ahead rose dizzyingly up like a fearsome rampart of giants, their curious regularity showing with startling clearness even without a field glass. We were over the lowest foothills now, and could see amidst the snow, ice, and bare patches of their main plateau a couple of darker spots which we took to be Lake's Camp and Boring. The higher foothills shot up between 5 and 6 feet miles away, forming a range of almost distinct from their terrifying line of more than Himalayan peaks behind them. At length, Ropes, the student who had relieved McTeague at the controls, began to head downward toward the left-hand dark spot whose spot marked it as the camp. As he did so, McTeague sent out the last uncensored wireless message to the world was to receive my expedition.